Okay, welcome everyone to level 3 player movement. The first thing before we start scripting, I'm going to go ahead and go to edit up here, and I'm going to go down to preferences, and then I'm going to go to external tools, and we need to make sure that under our external script editor, Visual Studio 19 is the currently selected thing. If it says open by file extension, then we're going to go ahead and hit this drop down, and we're going to click Visual Studio 2019 or any Visual Studio thing that appears there. If you cannot find it, you might have to hit Browse. If you cannot find where you installed Visual Studio, you're going to go down here to your window and Windows search, and you're going to click Visual Studio. When you see the file appear, you're going to right click and go to Find File Location, and from there you can use this browse feature to find your Visual Studio. It's not necessary, but it makes things a lot easier, as it allows you to autocomplete Unity keywords. With that selected, we're going to click on the X here, and now we're going to create our first script. So I'm going to go over to our project asset scripts in here. I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to create, I'm going to go to C# script, and I'm going to name it player movement, capital P, capital M. I'm going to double click here. If it's your first time using Visual Studio, it may take a while to load. If it does, go ahead and pause the video and join me when you finish. Okay, now that it's loaded, the first thing we need to check in Visual Studio every time is to make sure our file name up here is the exact same name as our public class. It will not run if they are not the same. Capitalization matters. Please avoid spaces and hyphens in your file names here, as it will often cause an error. Okay, so we have several things here on our script. I'm going to go ahead and make this maybe 175 so you guys at home can see a little bit. So our first thing, we have these using tags. This is going to be keywords that you're allowed to use that the system recognizes, that the programming language recognizes. Our public class here is going to be how to reference the script when other things want to talk to it. And then we have, by default, we always have a start method and an update method. Start is going to be called on the first frame that your item is active. So the first frame your character is active, or the first frame the item is active. And update is going to be called every frame. These are probably the most common, that's why they put them in there by default. Another quick thing, if you want to make notes, if you press // you can put notes in here, and the computer cannot read these. So these are very good. They're often used for developer notes. Get in the habit of doing this. Later, if you have something with 500 lines of code, if you go away from it for a month, you're going to come back and it's going to feel like something you've never seen. So the more detailed notes you put in there, the better it's going to be. All right, so we're going to go down into our void method, and I'm going to type // movement right. Then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to type if. I'm going to say input.get button. Sorry, actually, we're going to input.get axis parentheses horizontal. I can spell, I promise you. And then we're going to say greater than symbol 0. And then I'm going to put 2 curly brackets. These curly brackets here are going to be, if you're using an American keyboard, it's going to be next to the P key. Press Shift and the key next to the P key. And what this says is, if this is true, do something in here. All right, so input is going to get any type of input that's going into the computer, whether it be a mouse, a touch screen, a gamepad, etc. Get axis is going to be something from Unity. It's going to be on a scale of -1 to 1, and the axis we're going to get is horizontal. This is a preset into Unity. Of course, we can go in and make additional buttons and additional axes if we want, but for now, this is going to do. So by default, input.getAxis horizontal is set to A and D, left and right arrow. On a gamepad, left and right on the D-pad, and left and right on the analog. So if you hook a D-pad to this after this lesson, you can actually use your PlayStation control or your Xbox control to control your character as well as your keyboard. And it's going to be, if it's greater than 0, so remember I said it's on a scale of -1 to 1, so the positive button is right, so that's going to be D, right arrow, it's going to put it at 1. A and left arrow is going to put it at -1. So we're saying if it's greater than 0, so if it's positive number, which means if we're facing right, we're going to say transform.position. I promise I can spell. Transform.position is going to be in our player. We have this transform here and his position. So we want to affect that. So we're going to say transform.position plus equals. Plus equals means add. Plus equals new vector 3. A vector 3 is basically just 3 numbers. It's going to be an x value, a y value, and a z value. So we want to add to the position. On the f part, or sorry, the x, we want to add f. On the y, we want to add 0, and on the z, we want to add 0. So if you add a positive number to the x value, you're going to go right. A negative number, you're going to go left. And hit save there. Now, this actually will allow your player to move right. I'll go ahead and show you really quick. Let's go to our player here. And I'm going to go in Inspector. I'm going to go down to his Add Component. And then I'm going to get our player movement here. If you do not see player movement, that means you have an error in your script. And under your console, you'll probably see some red message that's an error. But in our case, we're okay. So now I'm going to press play. And if I press D, he's going to move. Oh, but he moves super quick. You probably couldn't even see that on your screen. He moves super quick is because he's moving. Every time we have this axis here, he's moving every frame. He's moving 5. So you can't see it, but my computer runs this at about 2,000 frames a second, making him very, very fast. So we can fix that by simply putting 5 asterisk. Asterisk means multiply. 5 times time dot delta time. Capital T, lowercase d, capital T. And time dot delta time converts everything into seconds. So instead of moving per frame, he's now moving 5 units per second. And that's going to make him feel a little bit better. But we can actually do this a little bit better. I'm going to put at the beginning of this. So right now, if you want to go ahead and try it, you can. You're going to see he doesn't move very well. He moves he keeps going a little bit after you move him. We can fix that by typing input dot get axis horizontal asterisk for times input dot get axis horizontal times 5 times delta time. So if I press D, it's going to be 1 times 5 times delta time, and whenever you let go, it gradually goes back to 0. So he's going to slide to a stop instead of keep going and then stop. It's going to be a lot more smoother. You can go ahead and try that out if you'd like. By the way, you can see an asterisk here. That means something is unsaved, so I'm going to hit Control S, same as Unity. Now with this code right here, I'm going to go ahead and just copy this from movement right down to this little closing bracket here. And then I'm going to hit Enter to go right below it and hit Control V. Make sure this is inside your void update sandwich. I'm going to go ahead and change this movement right to movement left. I'm going to change the horizontal to left. And then I'm going to make the transform, actually this can all stay the same. Because remember, if you press A or left, it's going to, this is going to turn to -1. This horizontal is going to turn to -1, so it'll now be -1 times 5 times time, and that's going to make him move left. So if I hit Control S to save, we have everything we need here to make our player move. So if you click on your player, if you haven't done so already, go down to the bottom, go to Add Component, type in Player Movement. If you haven't done it already, if you already have the script, don't worry about it. I notice I have an asterisk over here. I'm going to hit Control S. Now if I press play, our player is going to drop down, and if I press right, oh, look at him. He goes, he moves. Cool. So we've got our player movement there, very basic version. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into our script, and I'm going to add a little something to make it feel a little bit better. So what we're going to do, I'm going to say, so if we're moving left, I'm going to say this dot get component, and get component is going to access our things in here. So right now we have a transform, sprite renderer, box collider, rigid body, and player movement. So I'm going to go ahead and access our get component left caret on an American keyboard. That's going to be next to your M key. We're going to say sprite renderer. And if you have the Unity editor that we set up earlier, it's going to automatically give it. Then I'm going to type left caret, left parentheses, right parentheses, dot. And now we can access anything inside our sprite renderer. We want to access our flip x value. So I'm going to type flip x equals false. Because when we're facing right, he's already facing right. We don't want to flip x. We don't want to flip his value. So then I'm going to highlight this, hit Control C, and I'm going to hit Enter down here, and I'm going to add this, and I'm going to put true. Because when you're going left, he needs to face left, so we want to flip his x value. And I'm going to hit Control X. So if I go into here, before I load the script, I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to click on our player. I'm going to open up his sprite renderer. If I click right now, his x value is not checked. It's false. If I click it, it's now true. So when he's facing left, we want him to be that way. When he's facing right, we want him to be that way. So now if I press play, I can press right and I can press left, and he slides. We'll get into that later, but he does a pretty smooth motion. We're pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and hit play to stop. And now you have a player who can move. I will see you in the next one.